So without further ado, we come to slide lock, or rather bolt lock. Pop our magazine out, run in, just like so. Like I said, it's a hoot to shoot. Hi, this is Scott from Specter Gear, and as you can tell from the intro, we're going to be talking a little bit about pistol caliber carbines today. We're going to be talking a good bit about the Ruger PC Carbine, but the intent of this video is not so much to talk just about the Ruger PC Carbine, but to talk about the pistol caliber carbine concept in general. I've been involved with firearms since early 1981, and since then I've been continuously involved both as an end user, an instructor, and a manufacturer of accessories for firearms. So I've seen trends come and I've seen trends go, and I've seen cyclical things happen. For instance, in the mid-1980s, for instance, actually early to mid-1980s, pistol grip shotguns were all the rage. Then they died off, and not long ago they came back with the advent of the Shockwave and some of those other guns. And people sort of found out the same thing they knew back then, that there's a reason why they faded away. But the pistol caliber carbine is a concept that keeps circling back around and circling back around. And there's a reason for it. There's a good reason for it. Sometimes the concept has some merits. It just hasn't been executed properly. And I think this evolution, they finally may have figured out the proper elements to a good pistol caliber carbine. But when I first started in firearms, pistol caliber carbines, and not necessarily carbines, but submachine gun replicas, were all the rage. And this had a lot to do with what people were seeing in movies and on TV. In fact, one of the first actual, I guess you could say it was a tactical weapon for its time, but one of the first weapons that had a really big impact on me that I saw in a movie was the Charlton Heston movie, Omega Man. And in there, he had a Smith & Wesson Model 76 9mm submachine gun that he actually fired with the stock extended, which was quite a departure from what you normally saw in movies and television. And he even, because he was doing a lot of stuff going inside buildings, hunting for zombies or whatever the heck they were in that movie, he had an early version of a tack light. It was actually a big, silver Radio Shack type flashlight, like D-cell flashlight, that was plumber clamped or hose clamped to the shroud on the submachine gun. And I was intensely impressed by that. And ever since then, I've had a pretty good fascination with that particular system. So like a lot of people that, have a fascination with that kind of stuff, the manufacturers started putting out semi-automatic functioning, I guess not necessarily replica. They were a functioning firearm, but they didn't have a lot of the elements that the submachine guns had. They weren't select fire, for one. But secondarily, if they had a stock, they had to have an excessively long barrel in order to meet the requirements of the ATF. In a lot of cases, they would produce them without stock. So essentially, you just had a big pistol. But they were really popular back then. Now, not a lot of people used them for any serious purpose. Law enforcement never really got into them to any degree. But I knew a lot of guys that owned them, whether it was like the Uzi Model B or the HK94. Wilkinson had, there was a company called Wilkinson Arms that had a thing called the Linda pistol. And there were just all kinds of different variations that you could buy. And as time progressed throughout the 80s, when we got towards the end of the 1980s going into the early 1990s, a couple of companies actually took that pistol caliber carbine concept and actually made it into something that you could shoulder and actually operate effectively. And the two big ones at the time were the Marlin Camp 9 and 45, and then the Ruger had its original police carbine, which I guess if you squinted would look a little bit like the PC carbine, but it was quite a bit different. But a good gun, but unfortunately it just came out at exactly the wrong time to have any effect on the law enforcement market, so it ended up being discontinued. Same with the Camp 9 and the Camp 45. I liked the Camp 9 because what was interesting was the Camp 9 utilized the exact same 5900 series magazines that I carried on duty with my 5906. So it was an attractive concept, but I never managed to lay my hands on one, and still haven't to this day, although I would like to. And then the Camp 45 actually utilized 1911 magazines, single column mags. And They both had some good points to them, but about the time that they started to come into the market, North Hollywood happened. And when North Hollywood happened, one thing that was learned off of that was, if you're going to encounter somebody that's heavily armored and you're talking extended distances, and they're armed with AKs, and I think there was an AK, an HK91. And I don't know what else was involved in that, but there were some significant long guns, and these things were select fire, and these guys brought it. There's the infamous story of LAPD running down to one of the local gun shops and basically cleaning out their supply of AR-15s so they could have something to get into the fight with. So it caused law enforcement to kind of examine the patrol carbine in general, because none of the guys showing up, other than SWAT, had any kind of long guns other than shotguns. And right away they found out that the Beretta 9mm and the 12-gauge shotguns were just wholly ineffective against these guys that were armored up. Ironically, though, one of them got taken out by a 9mm pistol, and the other one got taken out by an MP5. So the 5.56 actually didn't even come into play. Both guys were eventually vanquished with 9mm rounds. So go figure, right? Although you could say the one guy actually capped himself, but it looked like he shot himself and then got hit in the head at the same time. But I digress. But suffice it to say, law enforcement was really looking at the time of, putting carbines in cars. And then there was the big debate over, what do we put into cars? Do we put in pistol caliber carbines, shooting a pistol round, or do we put in 5.56? And 5.56 won the day, and it won the day for a number of reasons. And I was sort of peripherally involved. Well, not peripherally, I was directly involved in this. But at the time, I had attended a number of gun sight law enforcement instructor courses. I was a tactical carbine instructor, tactical shotgun instructor. And one of the things that was presented to me during the tactical carbine portion was a test that gun sight had done, where they had taken a typical pistol round with a hollow point, 9mm and 40, and they compared penetration on things like drywall, because that was a big thing. Administrators didn't want these rifles that were going to go through an entire neighborhood, and that was the misconception, that a 5.56 round would just, go through 3 or 4 houses and kill a bunch of innocents, and the pistol round would stop safely in drywall. Neither case was true, but they needed to put it to a test. So they built a simulator where they basically built walls, and they shot them with different types of rounds. And they found that with the pistol rounds, with their hollow points, that when the rounds would encounter things like drywall and softer building materials, that the hollow point would actually fill up, and you wouldn't get that hydrostatic effect that causes the hollow point to actually open up, and that the round would then behave as just like a ball round would. And it penetrated a pretty good distance, a lot more than they thought. Then they found out that with a proper twist rate on the 5.56, that when that round encountered building material, that it would disintegrate shortly after impact. And the same thing would occur in tissue. In tissue, again, with a proper twist rate and barrel length, the round would cavitate, or it would yaw, cavitate, and separate. The nose would separate, and then the other 60 to 40% of the round would just turn into fragments, and it penetrated a lot less than a typical pistol hollow point would. So you had these scientific studies, or quasi-scientific studies, going on at the time, and again, the 5.56mm won. And you would, again, at that point, that's kind of when the pistol caliber carbine sort of died off a little bit. You stopped seeing people chasing after them. Everybody instead wanted M4s or CAR-15s or whatever variant you want to call it. And that was kind of it. But here we are, 25, 26 years later, and the pistol caliber carbine is back with a vengeance. And you have to ask yourself, why is this? Why are guns like this popular? And there's a number of reasons why that is. A lot of it just comes down to the fact that these are fun, easy, effective guns to shoot. And a lot of people, a lot of times, hey, when a gun is fun to shoot and it handles well, you start finding reasons and justifications to put it into your kit. Now, I will admit, if you put me in a situation where I had a choice of shooting someone with a 9mm or shooting someone with a 5.56mm round, which would I choose? I would choose the 5.56mm round. Now, Then if you start adding some context, though, I may start changing that idea, because some of the features of the pistol caliber carbine, and I'll explain what's going to inform this decision, are that they fire a pistol round, so we're talking a low recoil impulse, low muzzle flash, and it's not as loud. Okay, so that overpressure effect of shooting in a confined environment is much less with a pistol caliber carbine than it would be with a 5.56 millimeter. And this is where you kind of start seeing an opening for this, because yes, the axiom is true: carry the biggest gun you can and shoot them with the biggest round you can. But at some point you reach a point of diminishing returns where that can actually begin to backfire on you a little bit, and can be problematic towards you, because I get surviving the gunfight. But if you're surviving the gunfight, you no longer have any functional hearing, or you've damaged your eyes or something to that effect, then it's now a negative if you could have achieved the same results with something that did less damage to you in the process. So ask me that question about 5.56 versus a 9mm carbine. Now let's change the parameters and add, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you've grabbed your closet gun, you're in a hallway that's approximately 4 feet wide and anywhere, 20 feet long. So you're now in a channelized area where it's going to contain that overpressure effect from 5.56. That noise reverberation is going to come right back on you. If you've ever shot a 5.56 in a confined environment like that, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is like getting slapped on every part of your head at the same time. It's a problem. It genuinely is a problem. So you have to ask yourself, let's look in terms of stopping power. If I come up with a 5.56 and I drop a couple rounds on somebody, and I'm so stunned by the overpressure effect of doing that in a narrow hallway, I might be combat ineffective at that point. I might also have the problem of, because of the excessive muzzle flash, I might have my vision impaired. It's not far off from setting off a flashbang. Now, that's a bit of an exaggeration. A flashbang is slightly louder, but the effect is kind of the same. I've been there and done that, and it'll bother you. It'll bother you a good deal, and it makes it hard to get to the next level. And if you're talking about a situation that's developing, and it's not just confined to this moment, but you're going to have to continue carrying on, and you're going to need some of that hearing, and you're going to need that vision, it could be a problem. So yeah, if you flip the context and say, hey, you need to go hunt somebody up on a mountainside, I'm not taking a 9mm for that. I'm taking an M1A. But if I'm going to be hunting somebody in a hallway in my home, this starts to look a lot more attractive. And I will also add, when it comes to guns, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the movie Ronin, and you heard De Niro's character talking about how he views guns as a toolbox. It's a tool, you use the appropriate tool for the appropriate job. I've been an advocate of a concept like that for many years, but I look at more of a golf bag. And what I mean by golf bag, and I'm not a golfer by any means, but if you look at a typical golf bag, you have different clubs for different occasions. You've got a putter for short range, and you've got a chipping wedge for mid-range, and then you've got your drivers for long range. I think I'm right on that. And I look at guns the same way. You've got different guns for different missions. There is really no totally 100% does-it-all type firearm. There are some that get close, but there's times you're going to need to specialize a little bit. And where I've specialized somewhat is in terms of my closet gun, my home defense weapon. Now, I'm down to 2 choices at this point. I've either got a shotgun or I've got this, and I'm starting more and more to lean towards this is what I might grab in the middle of the night. What I have here is a 9mm carbine. It is fast to shoot. It handles well. It's short and handy. I wouldn't say necessarily light, because it's kind of heavy for what it is, but because it's so heavy, the recoil impulse is next to nothing. It is kind of like shooting a 1022 in terms of recoil. It's not much more than that. You can just sit there and just crank away with this thing, and you can do so accurately. So my ability to throw down on somebody and put 6 or 8 147 grain jacketed hollow points through somebody's center mass, that's kind of impressive. And I'm also going to do so without creating nearly the muzzle blast effect and flash effect that a 5.56 would do. With the shotgun, yes, I get 1 press, I get 9 pellets, but I also have the problem and distraction of if this thing goes extended and this person gets out maybe to the rear of my house or out in the street and I have to engage them there and the ranges start to increase, now I need to start thinking about containing the spread of that buckshot. This doesn't have that problem. So for not a heck of a lot more time than pressing a single shot of 9 pellets, I can put 6 or 8 into somebody's center mass almost, well, not as fast. I mean, admittedly, I got to pull the trigger each time, but I can drop them in there pretty darn quick. So there's some value to that. So I started looking at this thing in terms of golf bag stuff as a house gun, as a home defense weapon. This thing has some merit. It has some genuine merit. And set up like it is, I've got my Specter Gear buttstock magazine pouch, which of course I'll leave a link in the description where you can find these. So when I grab this thing out of the closet, I got 2 spare mags on the buttstock. I got a mag loaded into the weapon itself. So I've got on tap, depending on which mag I have in there, I've got 46 to 50 something rounds on the gun. That's a good amount. I have the ability for a single precision shot. I have the ability to throw controlled pairs of triples at somebody. I have the ability to keep single shots and as the distance extends, stay on target and deliver those rounds out to some pretty effective distances. At the front here, I've got a tack light mounted on the M-LOK barrel shroud. Now this is an aftermarket. This is Midwest Industries, by the way. And I'll talk more about this later because this video isn't necessarily so much about the PC carbine. I'm going to come back and do some subsequent videos where I really kind of dig down. I'll show you the exact setup I have, and we can talk about some things you can do to kind of increase the capability and effectiveness of this. But altogether, this is a nice, tight little package that I gotta say it's captured my attention. Your fight is your fight. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just telling you what I've done and some of the experiences I've had. I'm pretty confident and comfortable with this thing. It's pretty badass, to be honest with you, for what it is. Again, I have no illusions that if I had to, if I had to go out and we're talking ranges now of 150, 400, 500 yards, this is not the gun for that. This is not the gun for, this isn't something you issue to a soldier to take into the hillsides of Afghanistan. That would be nuts. But for home defense, this is not half bad. This is something to consider. And then there's the added value of because this does take 2 different types of mags. It'll take the Ruger 9mm pistol mags, but it'll also have it has the mag well supplied, so you have the Glock mags. So if you're a user of Glock firearms, particularly the 19 or the 17 or the 34 or whatever the long slide versions of Glock are, I don't pay that much attention to Glocks. You have the capacity to have interchangeability between what's on your belt and what's going into the long gun as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of being something that you might want to think about as a patrol carbine, because as a patrol carbine, this thing also has some merit as well. Again, in terms of penetrating soft body armor, no, you're not going to get that with 9mm. But you do have the ability to make more precision shots, because how much of that armor are you covering? How much of the rest of the body is left? Pelvic shots, head shots, throat shots. There's side entries. There's any number of ways that you can get around body armor even with a pistol, but we'll talk more on that later. But like I said, I just wanted to kind of cover the pistol caliber concept in general. And, there's a lot of them out there right now. And there's, again, a lot of different reasons why they've become more popular. Another thing that admittedly was a huge attraction was with some of the things like the CZ Scorpion. You had something that was essentially a submachine gun, because this thing, they were technically pistols, and then they had the brace. When they start doing the brace thing, and I'm not going to weigh in too deeply on a brace because this is a sensitive subject for people that are utilizing them. But as soon as they started doing that, I knew it was only a matter of time before that they would get a handle on that and it would become a problem for everybody. So I didn't delve into it too deep, and I didn't encourage others to do so either. But it did allow you to set up what was essentially a semi-automatic short barrel rifle. Yeah, it's a pistol brace, but yeah, it's also a buttstock. So what are you going to do, right? I get it. I think it's stupid. I think the whole concept of legislation of short barrel rifles and stuff, I don't even understand why that's a thing. Other countries don't do that. Some do, but you look at other countries like Australia back when they had guns, and you could have the short length. And look at Finland. Well, I'm digressing. I'm getting into a whole new area that I don't need to get into. So let's get back to pistol caliber carbine. Here's what I'm going to do to follow up. I want to go ahead and kill this video at this point because it's starting to get a little bit long. I've talked about the pistol caliber carbine concept in general. What I want to do for the next video is I'll come back and we'll take a look at the PC carbine in particular. And I'll show you some of the upgrades and modifications that I've done to this particular carbine. And we'll talk about some of the fun things about this. And we're going to do some more range videos. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time with this because this is something that has, like I said, captured my attention. And I want to work on some mods. I want to do something about this magazine well. I want to do something about the mag release, and yeah, there's a couple other things I want to add in on there. So I'll go ahead and document that. We'll do videos on them as we do them. But with that, I think now I'll go ahead and bring it to a close. Thank you for watching and or listening. This is Scott from Specter Gear. And if you're interested in, for instance, our buttstock magazine pouch for the PC carbine or the slings that we offer for the PC carbine, I'll leave you a link in the description, or you can go to spectergear.com for more information. So with that, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.